This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com or, of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and I'm joined by producer and editor Alex Ivany this week, who's worked on Finding Flow, Under My Skin, and more recently, the documentary Ifine Beauty. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thanks, Gordon. Appreciate you having me.
I guess my first question is, how did you get involved with this documentary, Ifine Beauty?
Yeah, so I've always been really interested in documentaries. That's kind of how I came up, and I actually majored in documentaries in film school. I went to Chapman, which had one of the few documentary majors. So I was always kind of drawn to documentaries. I ended up doing both in my career, but this was a project I find was really, really special to me. I had worked with the director, Adisa, previously. He had written and directed a independent feature about sex trafficking called Skin in the Game. So I teamed up with him on that, and that was in about 2018, I want to say. So that's how I first got introduced to him. And then this was fast forward about, 4 years to last summer. Adisa connected with me again. He said that him and his creative partner and friend were working on this documentary, developing this documentary about skin bleaching, the bleaching epidemic in Sierra Leone and across Africa, and actually a lot of different countries. And it really sparked my interest. I've done a lot of documentaries and work on social justice issues and things like that. And this had an international slant to it, and I was really, really interested. So I hopped on board. It was a really independent project, self-funded. So we kind of came to an agreement. They didn't have room for an assistant editor or post supervisor or any other roles in post-production, really. So our agreement was that I would kind of walk them through post using my experience in the world, and that I would be kind of the post producer on the project. So that included, going to color sessions, finding our great composer, Rashai, sound mixes, and just kind of facilitating all the workflow that went on behind that. So that's kind of how I got involved and how I ended up not just editing, but producing on that.
I grew up in a household in the projects in East Harlem. There's a program at WNET, the public television station, to get more people of color behind the camera, in the editing room, doing sound, writing scripts. When they put me in a dark room and they showed me how to use the splicer and the rewinds, I felt this big sigh of relief, this sense of, wow, I found my space. The editing part of filmmaking is the real nuts and bolts, what makes films come to life. You can ask Spielberg, you can ask Tarantino, you can ask Spike. When you sit here, this is where the proof is in the pudding. I'm Sam Pollard, and this is my class on documentary editing.
And like you said, it's very much a global issue. I remember when I traveled through Asia and into India and stuff, you would go into the pharmacies and there were skin whitening sections. And I'm wondering, because a lot of this deals with colonization of the world and its impact on generations. So how did you guys decide to approach that? Because it is not a touchy subject, but it's a subject that, it's harmed a lot of people. So there's a lot of people who have been harmed by this. And I'm wondering how you guys deal with such a sensitive subject.
Right. No, that's a really interesting question. And we took it from the point of view of kids in Sierra Leone, one particular community. There was five different characters we ultimately ended up with between the ages of 12 to 18. And we just had really amazing access to their lives, and they were extremely vulnerable in front of the camera. And I think this was in large part because Adisa, who I mentioned, had been traveling back and forth to Sierra Leone for, I want to say 11 or 12 years. He started a philanthropy there. And so he was very in touch with the community, and they felt very comfortable with him. Um, so that helped a lot. The initial idea for the documentary, I know, came about when he was out there and the kids were forming a play, and they were deciding what to do the topic on, and they decided to do it about skin bleaching. So initially, the start of this documentary was just going to be about the play and about what kind of their performance and portrayal of this, thing that they're touched and sometimes devastated by, is to them. So, but it turned into something so much bigger. They've found these amazing characters who are really willing to just open up and tell their stories. And I don't think that would have been possible with, a big production company. If it was a Vice or a news station coming out there, it just wouldn't have been the same material. So yeah, it's really about that openness, that community, and knowing that, yes, we're storytellers, but we want to represent you and touch on this topic that's so global, but also, not, your characters, but you also have lives, which is a really interesting thing I find between scripted and non-scripted, where there's the living person element in non-scripted that you have to be conscious of.
How do you this is the worst question to ask, but England, Britain, France, the Dutch to a certain degree, they go and they colonize these countries, and they've sort of set up this problem that we have now. But how do we go and fix that? How do we help in fixing that? Did you guys discover that as you were working on this?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's more from a character point of view, but we did touch on, in the end, there's, before the credits, we have a section that's devoted to statistics and how to get involved. And I mean, we do sort of target some particular organizations there that are making billions of dollars profiting off of these skin bleaching creams. But just in general, I think understanding these educational tools that are out there, including this documentary, and then, there's a number of other ways to learn about colonization and how it's affected some communities. I know I've worked with Array a lot, which is founded by Ava DuVernay, and they have some amazing online resources, not directly related to skin bleaching, but kind of about colonization as a whole, police brutality. They've founded this organization called Leap Action, which kind of targets police brutality. So I think it's just kind of educating ourselves and being conscious of that privilege that comes with colonization. And for me personally, I'm a biracial person. My father's Black, my mother's white and Jewish. So I'm always conscious of those sort of things, being kind of in between two worlds, and knowing, that I have a certain amount of privilege, and also, I have this historical trauma that's kind of happened. So
Yeah, how did you guys find the subjects and because part of one of the most important parts of a doc is finding the right subjects for the topic. So how did you guys go about finding them?
Yeah. There were a lot of pre-interviews. I think there were 11 or 12 different kids that we talked to beforehand, and then we kind of limited it down to, I think, 3 or 4. But then while out there in Sierra Leone, it turned into it changed rapidly. So like, I know they found a certain subject who had a younger sister whose mother was skin bleaching her, a baby, skin bleaching a baby girl. And they quickly shifted over to go film that girl for a day. So things kind of changed very quickly. Um, the production was very quick, in comparison to the quality of the material and how it looks. They had to move really quickly, and didn't have the luxury of staying there for a month or two, just to get these topics.
Well, and how do you portray, like, because that's part of the problem is like, we're going over and documenting other cultures, and so you have to be really respectful in the process and allowing them to be the voice. So how do you approach this, so that you aren't just continuing this othering, or the process of basically us telling other people's stories? Like, how do you approach this with other cultures?
No, that's a great point. I mean, it's really difficult to approach that because, right, we are going in with cameras and gear and stuff like that, and taking their stories and essentially bringing them back here to the US to show them to an audience. So it takes a lot of comfort. Like I said, Adisa was there for years beforehand to kind of gain the trust of the community and be a part of the community. They call him Adisa Baba there, which means father. So it was really kind of a family effort in that regard. But you still have to be really sensitive with the material, and then make sure that also they're, getting some sort of use out of it. And I know, I know that the team, Adisa and the team, really brought not just energy, but helped out a lot in terms of what their needs were out there at the time. I know one of the characters got a new roof because the roof was completely gone, and just things like that to kind of give back for them being so vulnerable and sharing their stories.
So when you move into post, like, what was your shooting ratio? Like, how much footage did you get in post?
Yeah, it was the cinematographer Antonio Cisneros shot a lot, which I love. He was a one-man team with two cameras, so he was just switching back and forth. And he wouldn't cut. So it's a lot of footage. I can't tell you exactly how many hours. I mean,
How many gigabytes?
yeah, yeah, right.
Or terabytes, I guess I should say.
Yeah, terabytes. I mean, I think it came in around 4 or 5 terabytes.
Wow.
So quite a bit for a short, it's a 30-minute documentary.
Mhm.
So, and another element of this documentary is it's preluded and bookmarked by sort of a narrative. We call it a choreo poem, where it follows this one girl as she's finding her beauty in herself, her Ifine, which means beauty in Creole, which is the language they speak there. So there was that element, which was very, I don't want to say staged, but it was narratively shot, where they did takes and everything like that. And then there was the main, documentary verite footage, which was just kind of fly on the wall, run and gun. There's some footage, of course, where I hear the cinematographer running and to catch up to a subject. And they really did it in a style that was like Sierra Leone, which is,
Mhm.
there's cars and motorcycles driving everywhere, and they are, running and gunning, shooting, sort of, they filmed out of the back of a car. all kinds of things, all kinds of tools. So yeah, I'm kind of going off tangent there.
Yeah. Well, and I think about Sierra Leone, it's gone through hell for the last 30 or 40 years. Like, I think, they've gone through civil wars, Ebola outbreaks,
Yeah,
economic colonialism. Like, there's a lot going on there.
yeah,
So when, similar to my previous question about, you know, your subjects and respecting your subjects, you also have to sort of respect the country and its culture, so you're not again sort of othering it. So like in the editing process, um, was there discussions on like how to portray Sierra Leone?
yeah, there was. I mean, we we were well aware that in the States and in a lot of, you know, colonized countries, that it seems like Africa is always a dilapidated place
Mhm.
where there's, such, it's poverty is everywhere. And we didn't want to portray it like that because yes, there is a lot of poverty, but it's also a beautiful country and there's a range of realities. But the particular realities that we are focusing on, they weren't, you know, affluent or anything like that, of course. So yeah, it's very difficult to kind of portray it without showing the poverty. I mean, there are things we show. One character's getting water from a well,
Mhm.
it's it's very kind of ancient in a way. But with the colors and just kind of what she's saying on the voiceover in the background, it kind of enhances it. And I think by having these characters as protagonists rather than just, you know, tools for making a point,
Mhm.
you really respect them and you get to learn about them and their realities. Um, and just like in a narrative film, you're rooting for the protagonist no matter
Mhm.
what background they come from. So we really just had to kind of work in the edit to massage that and make sure we know these people before we go into their what the drama is in their lives, which is the skin bleaching.
And so you have 5 people that you're following. Like how, because that's a lot of people to cover in 30 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
So were there things that ended up on the cutting room floor that you wanted to put in, but it just didn't work for the story?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, we had to cut down on one character. And then also just knowing how long to stay with a certain character is very important. We did, I think, 3 different test screenings where we kind of had a survey of questions, which character are you relating to, which one is not feeling as strong right now. So we really wanted to make them feel like, they were powerful, they were strong, even despite their issues. So yeah, it's in terms of on the cutting room floor, there's a lot of stuff. I don't want to give anything too much away because I'd love for the film to be enjoyed as it is, and I think we put together a really great film, really great 30-minute film. And there's, with documentaries, of course, there's always things that you have to leave behind, which is unfortunate. There's also things that we added later. We really needed to enforce that this was about colonialism because these kids were skin bleaching, but we had some audience members say, why? Why are they skin
Mhm.
bleaching? So we needed to show that and portray that. And one thing that we used that we didn't have before is there's this scene where they're kind of dancing in this field and they have their cell phones out and they're filming these TikToks and these social media videos. And the voiceover is something we actually pulled from a pre-interview where the character is saying, I love Beyonce, and she's kind of naming all these American celebrities. So you realize just how influenced they are by our culture here in the US, and just that colonialism sort of thing, and idolizing other Black women who had lighter features.
Do you think social media is making it worse then? Because I feel like the algorithms and everything are just going to amplify this problem.
Yeah, no, I think it is in a lot of different parts of the world. I know in India it's a huge problem. Our composer was really passionate about the project because she's an Indian woman, and she was saying this is huge out in India. A lot of Asian countries, I know Korea, South Korea. So yeah, I do think I think social media is playing a huge part in it. I think they see, you know, what beauty looks like, what the beauty standard looks like. And of course, the beauty standard kind of changes throughout the years and decades. But it's still not representing a lot of these communities.
Yeah.
So
now I have one last question for you, and this is like a crazy pivot. So, what would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch? Just something lighter to wrap up our interview.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I thought about that. Guilty pleasure is a little hard because it's like, what is a guilty pleasure? But I was thinking, I mean, it's one of the best shows of all time, but I still love Friends.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if that's considered a guilty pleasure. Um,
the
I
later
guess
seasons we
more,
could argue are.
yeah, yeah. I guess more in the recent years,
Yeah.
Outer Banks on Netflix,
Okay. Yeah.
just, totally kind of campy, and I don't really love the color tone and the style, but
Hmm.
I think it's so entertaining, and I got hooked early on, so I love it. And then, I mean, I've heard Insecure is kind of a chick flick, but I love that show.
Yeah,
So,
I didn't even think of it as a chick flick.
okay, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of it that way, but
yeah. In terms of shows, that's
yeah.
what I would say. Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview today.
Yeah, thank you, Gordon. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com, and of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs.